Hello, everyone in front of your screens. I'm so happy to be here at Vue.js Nation and being able to give you one mighty bite, which is not only mighty, but also important because today we're talking about accessibility in Vue 3 and how to make a simple component more inclusive. Let's get started. So this is our starting point, which is a simple Vue component, right? But not really accessible. There are a couple of problems, so let's improve it together. The first thing, we are able to what's on the image, which is pretty neat, isn't it? The second point I'd like to improve in this application is the usage of semantic HTML. There are two tags because you shouldn't use divs, right? Because a div will mean nothing that much for a screen reader. So let's use figure, which is specifically meant for grouping images and captions. And by using figure, we'll also replace the paragraph tag with fig caption, which explicitly labels the caption as related to the image. So a screen reader and search engine can clearly recognize the image caption relationship. So let's get here, go for a figure. There you go. And fig caption, figure caption. Yeah, try to always go for the semantic HTML. So a screen reader will know about what the elements are and how they are related. This way, it's pretty cool. And yeah, it will tell the browser in a specific tag that the content inside of this figure part belongs together. And that's it for today's Mighty Bytes on accessibility. We improved our Vue components accessibility by using alt tags and using semantic elements. These are small changes, but they make a huge difference for users with disabilities, so try to always go for them in case you can. If you found this useful, there's another session on accessibility by Mark Nguyen later today. Please feel free to take a look at it or at the recording later on. And until then, see you.
All right, y'all. Welcome back from break. Before we get started in our first panel, we have InstaDev. Our sponsor, InstaDev, has reimagined development delivery for the modern tech world. They provide production-ready Vue.js code without the typical risks and delays. Start your project within 24 hours, scale your development as needed with their flexible credit system, and quality guaranteed code every time. Whether you're building new features or launching a complete Vue.js app, InstaDev offers end-to-end delivery from a single expert team. Visit instadev.io to see how they're making Vue development more predictable and efficient. Thank you, InstaDev. And up next, we do have our first live panel, the perfect full stack fusion, Vue.js and Laravel. So Mostafa said is a full stack developer and a full-time instructor at Vue School and a Vue.js Jedi. And our panelist, Josh Sear, is a developer, educator, and creator. Josh works at Laravel, helps people learn to code, and enjoys building things. Most importantly, a father and a husband. Welcome to the stage, Mostafa and Josh.
Thank you so much, Jen, for this lovely introduction.
You are welcome, and you too enjoy. I look forward to hearing this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thanks.
and thank you for the introduction.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, Mustafa, how's you doing?
All good. What about you?
I am doing pretty good myself. It's been a good day so far. So I'm super excited to be able to be on this panel and have this discussion. And yeah, super excited just for everything that Vue.js Nation is kind of putting on. I love it.
Awesome. Me too. Yeah, it's been great. Like a lot of interesting talks. And Everybody out there, welcome to what I know is going to be a very super insightful and interesting panel. If you have any questions about Laravel, about Vue.js, about how to use both together, leave it in the chat. We'll pick it up from there. And Josh Siri here, and I know how to pronounce your name thanks to the tweet that you have pinned on your X profile. So leave it in the chat. We'll pick it up from there. And Josh here has some interesting insights about not only Vue.js, about the entire JavaScript ecosystem. You can see it even on his Twitter profile that he's saying from JavaScript to Laravel. So it's like he's adopting Laravel for everything. We're going to find out today. And cool. So ready to get started?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. So I'm going to show the first question that we have in here. What are your thoughts on using Livewire versus Inertia?
Yeah. It's funny because I think Inertia, obviously, for those who don't know, is the glue that kind of binds a Laravel backend with a Vue front end. And of course, you can also use things like React or Svelte on the front end as well. But Inertia and Livewire are probably two different ways of solving a similar problem, where a Livewire doesn't reach for a templating language. It uses Blade, Laravel's templated language, out of the box. And it uses kind of like Ajax requests to talk to the server. And the funny thing is, Caleb Porzio, the creator of Livewire, was and still is very much like a Vue fan, in the sense that a lot of the initiatives, the directives, and just how you write Livewire feel very Vue-like. In fact, the first Laravel app that I wrote was in Vue with Inertia, and then the second one was within Livewire. And a lot of it felt very similar. You're just kind of doing more things on the server versus the client. So my thoughts on using Livewire versus Inertia is kind of really comes down to what your needs are. Especially, you can still use Vue within Livewire. There's people who do, because you can use Vue just strictly on a client and not necessarily paired with Inertia. You could just use it for interactions instead of some other, JavaScript library. I know there's people who use like Petite Vue or even Vue itself within Livewire. But I think it all comes down to like your personal preference. Obviously, this is Vue.js Nation, so you love Vue, and then you're probably going to want to use Inertia because Vue is perfect for that. It's kind of everything that you might want, and it's only going to consistently get better within the story for Laravel, and that's what I'm really excited about as well. So Livewire lets you kind of write PHP, and then Inertia lets you write Vue.
Awesome. That's a great answer. And I've seen a video of yours. By the way, this guy here has a great channel and he creates a lot of cool videos. So yeah, check it out. So I've seen a video that you were talking about the same topic, and you were saying that Livewire allows you to follow the MVC model, and you can have everything done in one place instead of going or switching between the front end tool that you're using and the backend. So that was an interesting point of view. For me, I started learning the first thing. I started learning PHP. I'm sure that you might know my older brother, Mohammed Saeed. So he told me learn a little bit of PHP and then go learn Laravel. Like, don't go deep into PHP, just little bit, and then go learn Laravel. So I started with Laravel, and then I I discovered Vue.js, and I discovered how easy you can do JavaScript and how easy you can implement great stuff with so little effort. So I started mixing both, and then Inertia came out, and it was great. Like, it was really cool. So for me, for someone who loves Vue, like you said, most of us at Vue.js Nation loves Vue. I prefer using Inertia.js over Livewire, but of course, it's so interesting. Cool. So before we go,
Well, I was just going to say also with that, I think you kind of have this idea of when you're writing Vue, adopting Laravel with inertia becomes very, very easy, because now you have this idea of everything that is being served up to your client is just writing Vue, and everything that you're doing on the back end is writing, PHP or Laravel. And I was the same way as you, Mustafa, where I didn't know PHP. I still don't really believe I know PHP too well. I just know Laravel really well, and it helps me know PHP. But also on the topic of this, of how Livewire, specifically with Livewire Volt, for those who don't know, it's kind of like a single file component where you basically have your Vue and your server logic all in one file. I think we're going to be seeing some interesting things in Laracon EU that might help push that Vue and inertia story forward even more.
Nice. Hey, that's exciting. Looking forward to that.
Yeah,
So,
me too.
Yeah. So, cool. I have another question that can be related to the comparison of things. So let's have a look at that one. When do you choose Vue over Alpine.js in Laravel?
Yeah. Again, I think it comes down to probably the end goal of the project, because I'm going to be choosing Vue with inertia, where Alpine.js is probably going to be paired more with like a Livewire application. And I kind of see it more as how client side heavy is my application going to be, in the sense of for us at Laravel, when the team decided to build the couple of products that we're pushing out, mostly Cloud and Nightwatch, those are very heavy intensive client side applications. And while we're using React for those would be perfect instances for when I would personally choose Vue and inertia over Alpine.js, because it allows me to do anything that I want to do in Vue, import any Vue package, import any Vue library, and be ready to go, where I don't have to think about compatibility. I don't have to think about how I'm getting information from the server to the client. Since inertia already takes care of that, I just have to write Vue on the front end. And so that way I don't have to worry about when I'm accidentally leaking information, or maybe like I'm doing too many server side interactions. It makes it a lot easier, because that separation of server to client is a lot more cleaner and a lot more simple. It's something that I'm always a huge fan of, is basically like choosing the right tool for the job. And I think when you choose Vue over something like Alpine.js, is you're probably reaching for a specific package, or maybe like a specific maybe you just already have built out 90% of it in another application. You're just easily porting it over to Vue with inertia and Laravel, or you're wanting those an easier way to do client side snappiness, because I think inertia gives you that SPA kind of feel, especially with the features of inertia 2, where we can defer specific props when we're loading them on the front end, or we can even have prefetching within Vue links, and the most recent change of being able to have specific JavaScript not load until you actually use it. And that's what I think makes inertia and Vue so powerful within Laravel.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. So before we continue with the questions, I have a question of mine. Can you tell me a little bit about Laravel? What is Laravel? And basically, why would a Vue.js developer who has full stack frameworks to do the server side of things, like Nuxt, for example, why would I use Laravel? Like, what is the benefit? What will I gain?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say that Laravel wouldn't necessarily, Laravel could still be used fantastically with something like Nuxt. So it's not one of the things I always like to try to say is it's never going to be you have to use Laravel and never use Nuxt again. Or you have to use Laravel and never use your specific flavor of Vue with your specific flavor of backend. You don't really have to do that. Laravel can be adopted incrementally, which is something that I love. There's even community packages put out that are specific adoptions within Laravel and a Nuxt application, where you kind of have these helper functions that I don't remember the specific community contributor for those off the top of my head, but there is a Nuxt version of what's called Laravel Breeze, which is a authentication kind of scaffolding or starter kit. And there's so many cool things that the community has done within Nuxt and Laravel, and you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the snappiness and all the functionality of a Nuxt application. You get the packages and the modules of a Nuxt application. Modules in Nuxt, as a side note, are some of my favorite things. Like I hope more of the development community as a whole brings that kind of capability and compatibilities within their own flavors of JavaScript. But I think when you would reach for Laravel, and what Laravel is basically a batteries included full stack framework in PHP. And I think the strength of Laravel comes from, one, everything that Laravel brings is a first party application. So things like authentication, whether that's social authentication or two-factor authentication, everything that is kind of baked in when it comes to that. We have preferences and opinions while you still have flexibility within the framework. And so whether it's authentication or queues, how you talk to a database, all of it is first party. So you know that if you wanted to switch up and you're on developing locally in a SQLite database, but when you push to production, you're going to be in a Postgres database, and now you have to think about, okay, now where are my queues living and all this. It's really simple in Laravel because it's just kind of changing a development environment flag and saying, okay, I just want to use Postgres now. And I think that's really the benefit of what Laravel brings is, while Nuxt is great, you kind of have to pick and choose what you want on the back end. And if that's what you prefer, that's great. But if you don't necessarily want to do a hosted queue service, then maybe you want to use Laravel's queues itself. And maybe that's the only thing you use Laravel for if you have a Nuxt app. I know a lot of teams and folks who have incrementally adopted Laravel by first just saying, okay, I want Laravel to run my queues and jobs. And that's the only thing it touches. And I, send an API request and I get stuff back after the queue's finished. And then I push it to my database and I'm not even connecting to my database via Laravel. That's perfect. But I think it's also great to be able to know if you wanted to have Laravel run everything on the back end, from authentication to queues to mailing. All of that can be done and is really fairly simple. I always say, even if you don't know PHP, it's fairly easy to get up and running.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one of the things that's made me move from kind of more a serverless JavaScript approach, in the sense that I was using a lot of services for my backends. And then I started building in Laravel with Vue and Inertia and everything else, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah, I mean that's a great and powerful duo. Both of those tools are achieving a lot together, whether it's just Vue or Nuxt. So it's just amazing, and it's amazing how fast, like you just mentioned, how fast you get started with very little knowledge. You can just hit some commands, and those commands is going to scaffold an application for you with the database setup, with authentication system, with everything. Like, you have a live application that you would spend hours trying to build and put the pieces together. Everything is put together for you, and here you go. You have your application, work on the logic, and that's it. And like you mentioned, you don't have to pick whether to use Laravel or something else. Laravel is always there with all of the amazing features, and you can just use it for one thing. So that's great.
Exactly.
I know a lot of people, we have a course Daniel Kelly worked on Vue School, and it's using Nuxt on the front end, communicating with Laravel API with authentication and everything.
Awesome.
So yeah, that was super. Yeah. And also, I'm working on another course now for Inertia, and how easy it is for front-end developers to just hit the command, get the application, understand what is it all about, and I'm not even explaining a single line in PHP. everything is super smooth and easy. So yeah, that's the beauty of Laravel, I guess.
Yeah, just that the ability to get from one command up and running is incredible to me. Like that's really one of the reasons why I stuck with Laravel after trying a bunch of different batteries included full stack frameworks. It was like, oh, I have this one command and I have a dashboard and I can say if my user is logged in, I want to show them this. You would be surprised that even with all the great tools that and modules that Nuxt provides, for example, you can do that, but it's still fairly complicated if you want to do something as simple as if my logged in user is actually logged in, show them this kind of thing. It becomes a little bit more trickier when you're talking to two services at a time, maybe your authentication service and your and also your database service, for example. At Laracon EU, there's going to be some updates on what the what the future of starter kits look like in the Laravel and Vue ecosystem as well with Inertia, and I'm really excited for those.
Oh, now I'm excited because I thought that it's already feature complete. Like the whole thing is just amazing. So more updates.
It is, but
sign me in.
we can be better. We can do more.
Yeah, I bet you can. Yeah, your team is awesome.
Tony Leia, who recently joined Laravel, specifically helping to work on open source projects. He was the founder of Dev Dojo, huge Vue fan, he kind of is just huge Laravel fan and is has been building Laravel for longer than I've even known about Laravel. But he's doing some fantastic work on the starter kits. I'm really excited for everyone to see him.
Yeah, super excited as well. Cool. So jumping to another topic, we have another question here. Does Laravel has an easy way of doing real-time data with a Vue app?
It does, especially if you're using Inertia. I mean, I can't talk too much about what that would look like in a kind of more traditional Vue SPA, while it still can be done. The cool part is Laravel has kind of first-party adapters for real-time WebSocket connections. So whether you're using Pusher or Laravel's own feature complete Reverb, which is basically a socket real-time connection server where you can easily say, okay, after a specific queue is done, I want to send a notification to something, and I'm listening to that same thing. And so within Inertia, it's as simple as basically on a single page or in a single component saying when that specific event has been sent, when that real-time dispatched event has been sent, then I want to do something with it. And so real-time data becomes incredibly popular, and you don't have to, while Inertia still has a great story, specifically within Vue for polling, where you can kind of do like a fake real-time, I guess, and say every 5 seconds I'm checking for new information. The ability to set up Reverb or whatever else you prefer within Laravel and kind of consume that in a Vue front end with Inertia is really easy, but also just really powerful too. I am not a developer on the cloud team for Laravel Cloud, but the Laravel Cloud team is really heavily using real-time data within their application, and it's using Reverb. And while that it's using React on the front end, it's still the same implementation that you would use for Vue within Laravel.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I mean, I haven't tried Reverb yet, but it looks so cool. Even from the homepage, it looks so cool. And also, we have another course on Reverb, Daniel Kelly did, and it felt so smooth. Looking at videos and everything just felt so smooth. Like you said, the first-party tooling that Laravel offers is just so tempting to try out.
Oh yeah. It makes things so much fun when you can look at the docs and it's all on one website. That's my personal pet peeve.
Yeah, I agree. Having everything in one place.
Yep.
Cool. So the next question: how do you handle validation across Vue.js application and Laravel?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's this package called Precognition. It was created by Tim McDonald on the Laravel team, and Laravel Precognition basically is the real-time data validation between Laravel and Inertia. Again, another incredible first-party package that you could probably do all of this by hand, but why would you when we could do it for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Laravel Precognition is really incredible. I haven't gotten to use it as much as I would like, but basically, you can say within Vue and Inertia, basically after installing an npm package. In your form component within Inertia, and you can also do this within a Vue SPA as well, still use precognition to get those real-time data validation. But you can basically say when this specific form is going to be posted on that submit method, you can get, or before that submit method even happens, you can get those validation back from the server. So not only do you now have client-side validation within your Vue application, but you also have all the wonder. If you haven't looked at what Laravel has in terms of validation, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but there's like over 150 ways to validate something in Laravel, in the sense that you can be like, okay, this is a string, but it's a minimum of 2 characters and a maximum of 333, and it has to be like these specific characters, and you can do even regex in your validation thing, or you can even say, is this a valid domain? All of these simple validation helpers that Laravel gives you out of the box. Now you can use those with your Vue and your Laravel app. So yes, Laravel does handle form validation, specifically within Inertia, but precognition that I talked about also works within an SPA as well. And all of the Inertia stuff is really, the magic comes down to Inertia's form helper, which basically wraps up everything super nicely. I haven't personally used any form package within Vue outside of Inertia, but if you're used to kind of like having a form package helper where you're just like, hey, here's my name, here's my email, and this is where I want it to post to, that's exactly what Inertia provides, and it makes those validations super easy.
Yeah, it sounds tempting to try out. I mean, it's amazing how all of these validation rules are out of the box. It's not something that you grab extra. It's just you use it, and it's right there for you to use, and without doing anything extra. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the next thing I think is going to be interesting, because TypeScript. So what are your thoughts on using TypeScript with Vue and Laravel?
Yeah. I am not a TypeScript master by any means, but I've learned TypeScript through using Laravel's TypeScript packages within Vue and Laravel. So I think the TypeScript story is only going to get better. I believe the new starter kits, don't quote me on this because I don't know if it's 100% true, but I believe the new starter kits are using TypeScript completely for both Vue and React. But I think using TypeScript within Vue and Laravel gives you just more flexibility, and also kind of makes the jump from server to front end even more powerful and even more, I don't know, friendly, if that's a good way of putting it as well. I know that there's a specific Laravel package called Laravel Spotsy. Spotsy is a kind of an agency that has so many Laravel packages that they just create and build and give away for free. Open source packages, and one of them is called Laravel Data, I believe. And basically it allows you to create types for all of your back end models, and then it just makes working with Laravel and TypeScript within Vue just so much cleaner.
So does it share, like, I'll jump to the next question because it's related. Does it share the types between Laravel and Vue? So the question is, what's your preferred way to share types between Laravel and Vue? So what you just mentioned, does it already share the let's say the type that you defined on the server side, does it share it automatically with the Vue application using Laravel?
Yeah, so this is probably answering not my preferred way, just because I don't use types as much as I should. I probably should use them more. But yes, so the Laravel data packages by Spotsy, and I believe this is probably the most used one. There's probably other ones that I'm forgetting as well. But basically, it allows you to set a specific PHP object in your backend that extends this data a class that allows you to say, okay, this specific this specific model has a string that is a title, and this specific model has a string that is an artist, and then those specific types automatically get generated to be able to be consumed on the front end. And so that way you're not worrying about you're not worrying about having to write those by hand. You only configure them once in your backend, and then because PHP does have types itself, you're kind of having those types being shared from the back end to the front end within Vue.
Nice. So the Vue application will know what to expect, what data it's expecting from Laravel by default, since you already defined that in Laravel.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know if that's doable within like a Vue SPA or even Nux, but I know within Inertia that that specific package does work great with Inertia.
Nice. Yeah. Well, in Next, usually in Next, you don't write TypeScript a lot unless you're writing Vue components. Then you would like to write TypeScript for Vue components. But Next already, like Nitro, which is the server-side engine, is already like trying its best to set the component expectations of what data is coming from the request that you're requesting. So it also shares the types somehow, but it doesn't also always work. So you know what I mean? Like it does its best to do that by default, so you don't have to manually type your data, but as much as possible, it tries to generate the type that you're expecting so that your component knows what data it's getting from the server side. So yeah, it works in Next, but sometimes it just needs a little more work to do.
Yeah.
Cool. So I have another question here. What are the key performance? Let me show that. Sorry. What are the key performance bottlenecks when using Vue.js with Laravel, and how we can optimize them? That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think really it comes down to what the key performance bottlenecks would be when using Vue.js without Laravel. Because I think with Inertia, a lot of times it's easy to think of Inertia and Vue together kind of being this own crazy package where it's just a different flavor of Vue, when really it's not. It's just serving up a Vue, rendered DOM within your Laravel application. I think it becomes so much more important to think through, okay, what performance optimizations do I need to make sure that I account for when I'm writing this Vue application, regardless of how my application is being served up. And I think Laravel helps with that because probably just from like a developer experience kind of way, where now you aren't necessarily having this in direct, okay, I'm going to make this API call and do this to make sure I get the data that I need. Working with Inertia makes it a little bit easier, because now you can say, when I serve up this particular page, I'm already sending across the data that I need and consuming it on the front end that way. And I think the biggest performance bottlenecks to kind of think through is what kind of data are you serving to the page, how much data, as well as what kind of data are you requesting or submitting from the page within your Inertia app. Because one of the biggest things is sometimes you send more information than you actually need, while Inertia is that glue that doesn't allow you to have to write an API. You still can be like, okay, I'm sending maybe a list of all my users. Well, maybe you don't necessarily need their hashed password, and you don't necessarily need whatever 8 other table columns that are in your database. You just need maybe their name, ID, and email. And Laravel allows you to, easily only send that information. especially within Laravel's JSON resources, which is great to kind of say, anytime I serve this to my Inertia application, I only want to send this information. I think that's usually where performance bottlenecks happen for the most part within any SPA app. Is usually you're trying to maybe filter through more information than you actually need, when really you only need 1 or 2 columns.
Yeah. So basically, it doesn't impact performance in any bad way. Like using Laravel with Vue.js, it doesn't impact performance. It depends on what data you're expecting. Are you sending back only the data that you need, or are you sending back everything? Like you give the user everything, so you'd have to wait for all of this data to load. But for performance problems, I don't think there is a specific performance problem, because, it just works.
Yep,
cool.
Exactly. It just works, and it's not necessarily the you're serving up a Vue application that already has the connection made to your Laravel backend, and not necessarily a Laravel application that Vue.js is living on. I think that it helps to know that there's nothing that Laravel is doing within Inertia that's going to hinder performance when it comes to actually rendering your Vue application.
Yeah, and PHP is fast. I mean, it's not slow
fast.
as some people might think, but it is super fast now, and it has developed and improved so much since years ago. So cool, awesome. So I have here another question. Do you have UI libraries recommendation for Inertia, Vue, or React?
Yeah. I think my personal preference is that I like things that give me still flexibility in how I customize something, while also just giving me everything that I want if I don't have to customize it too. And I think really this is not going to be maybe shocking to most people. I think ShadCN is probably like the UI recommendation for anything Vue or React. There's a Vue port. I think there's even a Svelte port that are both community kind of ports. And that is what the new starter kits within Laravel will use, as well as ShadCN for both Vue and React.
Oh, nice. That's cool to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome. So you just run the command to install and start with the starter kit, and it will use ShadCN by default. Am I correct?
By default, you're correct.
Nice, cool. That's super
and
cool.
it's cool. Even the ShadCN React one has a how to install this with Laravel currently on its current site. So that's, I think, the creator of ShadCN, his name's ShadCN on Twitter/X. He's a Laravel fan as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm now checking if there is also a Laravel guide, and there is on ShadCN Vue. So this is super cool as well. Yeah.
I didn't look at the Vue one yet. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, super cool. Okay, so next question. What's your approach to error handling between Vue and Laravel?
Approach to error handling. I think this probably pretty comes into the precognition stuff. So especially if you're doing any kind of form validation, and that's usually where most of your errors are probably going to come from. Other than that, you're probably going to reach for, Laravel gives you the ability to have a session data, and that's really where a lot of your errors are probably going to live, errors that you want to actually display on the front end. And so I forget exactly how to do it within Inertia, but there's basically a way to say within your PHP, when something happens, if I have any kind of error, I want to return back and display a particular message, and then you basically just can that's automatically passed to your Vue front end, and you can display it how you want. And so I think Inertia specifically gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to error handling within Vue, because then you don't have to worry about how am I consuming this particular error message, and how do I want to display it? You're just saying, if there's ever an error message on this particular page, this is what I want to show. And so that works great when it comes to, of course, there's already kind of that form validation that you get those errors back. But then there's also that maybe you're running a long time queue on a particular page and you're pulling the server, or you're doing reverb and listening in real time. You always want to make sure you're displaying that to your user. So I think the error handling approach, I would default to Laravel's error handling, and then make sure I just display that on the front end whenever possible, whether that's through a session or just a simple v-if.
Yeah. I mean, Inertia has this use form composable, and it's really impressive. It reads the errors, and it gives you some hooks that you can listen to, or you can react to errors as they come. And it is super helpful. People out there, check it out. The use form composable is really helpful. So and there is something that I would like to, I don't know, focus on, even though I don't have a question about, which is queues and jobs. It's a very interesting topic, and the concept and the implementation and everything, it's also built in. Like, you don't grab something additional. I believe you just start working with it, and you just run some commands. You have the database ready for your jobs, and you get started. So can you please tell us more about queues and jobs? What is it? And go ahead.
Yeah, I think queues and jobs are so powerful within Laravel, and really what we would say is the first approach you should reach for whenever you're doing something that is very server intensive. So anything within Laravel can automatically be pushed to a queue, even if you're sending something like email, which most of the time you might be thinking, okay, when I click this button, I want to notify a user. But most of the time you might be thinking, I don't really need to have that be in the background, right? I can just have it be processed with the server request. But what if hundreds of thousands of people are doing that exact same thing? And so I think Laravel makes it incredibly simple within queues and jobs to say pretty much any event that you're going to do, should this be queuable? And it's as simple as when you're writing your job, or you're writing maybe a notification, or you're writing a specific event. I just want to automatically push that to a queue. And then you can get even more advanced things like queue and job batching. I have reached for this personally when I started learning Laravel. Was I needed a way to basically say, I want this one job to run, but then when it completes, I need to grab that information and push it to another job. And I need to do that for hundreds of jobs as I kind of walk through. It was kind of like an AI process of getting information back from the AI, and then like doing with that information for the next question. Mm-hmm. And that's where there's so much flexibility and so much power within Laravel's queues and jobs to say, okay, I want to run all of these jobs at once, or I want to run maybe 5 of these jobs at once, or maybe I want to say all of these jobs should run concurrently, and then once they're all finished, then I want to run this next jobs concurrently. And so the flexibility, the options that Laravel gives you is really anything that you might think of for application. I think that's what it comes down to within building for Laravel, is a lot of the features and parity features that have been created mostly by Taylor Otwell have all been given because they've been building applications within Laravel for 10 plus years now to say, okay, here's the things I need. And that's why new features come out in Laravel every week, because here's the things we need to build our products. So here's what's going to happen. And here's the new stuff we can give to our community as well.
Yeah, it's crazy, the new features. Like every single time that I say, okay, Laravel, that's it. You have everything. Like I cannot think of something missing in that. I'm not going to say first party solutions. I'm going to say even the ecosystem. The ecosystem is full of everything. And there are more updates, more features, more products out there. And most of it we can use even without paying anything. So it is impressive. And for queues, the concept is interesting that it's all done under the hood without delaying anything to the end user. So let's say that
Mhm.
the user is, you have some sort of an image optimization service where people upload their images and it gets optimized or something. You don't have to force the user to stay on the page waiting for the image to be uploaded and so on. And like you said, maybe hundreds or thousands of people uploading images at the same time. You can add a queue, prioritize your tasks, and tell your application, okay, if the user is subscribed, give him higher priority than other jobs that are not subscribed. So those people will wait longer, those people will wait less, and
Yeah.
everything is happening on the backstage. It is crazy. It's just super powerful.
It really is crazy. I think that's the queues and jobs were really the selling point for me of realizing that there's power within like an actual full back end service, and not having to kind of worry about, for me, okay, what limits am I running up against if I'm running this completely in the browser or completely on the maybe like a serverless function or something like that. So I think it's really crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so another question that's related to Daniel Kelly's talk, which is about, yeah, that's the one I think. It's about AI. So, can I use Open API? Oh, that's AI. I think I clicked the wrong one. But anyway, can I use Open API with Laravel to document REST APIs for use with a Vue frontend?
Yes, you can. There's probably a bunch of different packages. I don't know one off the top of my head, but I know that there's a ton of resources that have been created to generate REST APIs using Open API within Laravel. And I think they kind of coincide with Laravel's data package as well, like within Spotsy too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another related question here. Does Laravel come with any AI libraries for interacting with common LLMs? Like, does it have first-party solutions, or is it the ecosystem?
It does not have first party solutions just yet. I know that might be something coming down the line, maybe in the future. But there is a fantastic third party package that I know folks on the Laravel team have been able to play around with as well. But it's created by a guy named TJ Miller. It's called Prism, and it would be one that I would definitely want everyone who's interested in that to check out, especially using Laravel within AIs, because it's basically, I think that's at prism.ecolabs.dev, and it basically gives you the ability to use any LLM that you want and be able to connect to that LLM without having to write any additional code. So you're switching between LLMs maybe, or maybe you just want the best particular one for a given user or different given region or something like that. Basically allows you to simplifies your APIs and how you write your AI code. And usually that AI code's like we said, is probably going to be in a background job anyways. So.
Yeah, nice. Sounds interesting.
It's really
okay. Yeah. The next question: what is a good testing strategy when you use Laravel and Inertia together?
Yeah, I think the testing strategy. So Inertia has its own kind of endpoint tests that you can do within Laravel to kind of say, does it have the particular things on the page? Really within Laravel specifically. So yeah, Inertia on the docs does have like a full page specific to testing. And most of those are going to be specific to endpoint tests. Of course, you can use something like end-to-end tests with Laravel Dusk, or even client-side tests. Those are not going to be specific to Laravel, like you might be familiar with, like within Jest or something like that. But Laravel kind of has two versions of testing currently. It would be Pest PHP, written by Nuno Maduro and team, and then there's also PHP Unit, which is kind of more of a class-based testing strategy. So a lot of the tests that you're going to be doing within Inertia for things like endpoints for that inertia application. Those inertia pages are going to be done within Laravel, but then also you can write tests for your actual backend logic as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, so next question. Server-side rendering with inertia.js, server-side rendering of Vue app with Laravel. I think it's versus, I think. Yeah,
Versus maybe.
comparing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to what you need, kind of thing. I think within server-side rendering within inertia.js, it's there's not going to be too much maybe downsides within a server-side rendering of a Vue application. You might lose a little bit of like snappiness in terms of like how it feels in the application. I think it just kind of depends on what your personal preferences are on connecting to your Laravel application. Maybe you want to connect via an API, or you want to maybe like you're using a Vue app with Laravel, a traditional classic Vue app, because you have a mobile application. You don't want to kind of write two APIs. That's probably a great opportunity for using a Vue app with Laravel versus Inertia, where Inertia you don't have to write the first API because it's just served with Laravel and Inertia. But then if you had a mobile app, you would have to write a second API. So I think it comes down to personal preference, but also like what your project's preferences are too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you are planning in the future to have a mobile app or something, inertia shouldn't be an option. Like inertia allows you to avoid writing APIs. So if you're going to need APIs in the future, then not inertia. It's not going to help you with that. Cool. So now we have our final question. Let's have a look at that one. Any guide on reset password, special to app, Laravel and Vue app different? How to manage URLs?
Yeah. Guide on reset password, special to app, Laravel and Vue app different. How to manage URLs. I think so. Basically, Laravel gives you, especially within our starter kits, Laravel Breeze gives you the ability to have a password reset out of the box within Inertia, specifically within Vue. And I think like that's usually like we kind of give you the tables already set up and basically all the server-side logic already set up, even the pages set up to do that. As long as you have an email provider connected, it comes out of the box. But Laravel also just has so many helpers and functions to be able to do that. In terms of like, okay, we know most applications are going to have users tables. So the users table is already given to you whether you use a starter kit or not. And then it's as simple as saying, I just want to, reset that password or update that particular user. And so I think there's a bunch of different ways to do that in terms of how to manage URLs. Most of the time, those are going to come. Laravel gives specific hashed session URLs where like that only lasts for a specific parameter at a time, and all of that is configurable out of the box too.
Yeah, it is awesome. Like it's effortless. It's you don't need to do anything. It's just out of the box. Here are the URLs, and if you have an email provider, the URL is going to be sent to the user, and that's it. You don't have to even think about how it's being done behind the scenes. Of course, you can learn about it, but yeah, you can just use it.
Yeah, it's funny because I get so many questions of like or people are like, hey, can you make a video of like doing building authentication from scratch within Laravel or like password reset or something like that. And I'm like, I really don't know how to do it. I mean, I could probably learn, but I don't really have to know how to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. Awesome. So that was the last question. Thank you so much, Josh. It's been great. We have gained a lot of insights and also some inside surprises coming in about starter kits and more interesting things. So thank you so much, Josh.
Oh, thank you so much, Mustafa, for having me and Vue Nation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, y'all. Up next, Mastering Pina. How often can you do a course developed by a creator? This is an awesome part of Mastering Pina, which is developed over many months by Eduardo San Martin Monrot to teach us the best possible way to master state management for Vue.js. Mastering Pina is a course is only $199 during this conference. This course will walk you through everything you need to know about Pina so that you can manage state like a pro. So definitely go check that out. And up next, we have Jakob Androwski for Dungeons and Developers, Patterns for Great DX. Jakob is a front-end developer at Montreal and Nux, Storyblock and Algolia Ambassador. Jakob enjoys helping developer communities grow and sharing knowledge about Nux, Vue, and Perf. So welcome to the stage, Jakob.
Okay, so I think I'm live. Let me share the screen. Okay, so we have the screen and slideshow. So Dungeons and Developers and developer experience, two of the things that I'm really big fan of. So I would like to make it as fast as possible, just the slide title, because I have a lot of interesting things to share with you. So my name is Jakub, and I was already introduced. I am a full stack or front-end developer at Montreal. I'm also a part of a Nux ecosystem team. I will talk about it a bit later. And I'm also a Google developer expert in web performance. So, do we have any Dungeons and Dragons fans here? I hope so. I know that there is Anna and there is Alex Lichter. I know them because we played a D&D session together. But if you have not tried Dungeons and Dragons yet, you should definitely do it. You should definitely try it. It's an amazing role-playing game where a group of friends can meet, and one of them is a dungeon master, which is basically a person that takes the group through certain scenario, through certain story, and tells them what encounters, what enemies they encounter, what people they meet, what things they encounter during the journey. And the other players pretend or believe that they are someone else, like a knight in a shiny armor or maybe a sneaky rogue. So it's amazing, and I definitely recommend you to try it. So what is developer experience? So GetReport has this definition for developer experience. So it is about ensuring that developers are able to conduct the work they need to do with velocity and quality. But my honest definition would be that developer experience is about making our life as developers easier so that we can focus on solving difficult challenges rather than fighting the configuration and other stuff. Why does good or why is good developer experience important? Why does it matter? The thing is that the better developer experience equals improved developer productivity, which means that if there is a tool on the market that delivers certain set of functionalities, and there is another tool on the market that delivers the same amount of functionalities but provide better developer experience, more and more developers will transition to it, purely because we as developers love when we can just focus on solving problems than, as I mentioned, working with configuration and struggling with it. So if there is a tool or a module or a plugin that we can install to make our life easier, we will try it, and if we like it, we will definitely go with it. So what developer experience and Dungeons and Dragons have in common? I would say that there is one important aspect of those two things that is the same, which is basically related to the aspect of learning. So if we have a Dungeons and Dragons, if you are a dungeon master, you probably already know the set of rules, and you already know how to build a character, how to run a session, and so on and so on. But you will run these sessions with with friends or with people who haven't done it yet. So you would need to explain to them the rules so that they can basically play the game. And it's almost the same as with trying a new module, plugin, or a product or software, is that we need to have this kind of like getting started or quick start, or basically instructions on how we can actually use this tool to solve our problems. And I can tell you from experience that at the beginning, when I was running my sessions, D&D sessions, and I wasn't paying that much attention into making the learning experience as good as possible, players were becoming frustrated because they didn't understand all the rules. They were trying to do something that was against the rules, so it was difficult for them to understand what they can or what they cannot do. So making this learning experience as easy as possible was crucial for them to have the fun sooner than later. So the easier we will make it for the new D&D players to start, the better the experience will be. And it's just like with developers learning a new tool. Before we go to the patterns, like the good developer experience patterns, let's talk briefly about the metrics that we can use to audit if our tool or software has actually a good developer experience. So first of all, we have quality of documentation. And what I mean by that is if the documentation of each tool or a plugin or a feature is all there, is it easy to follow and complete? And in here, I would like to share the example of the documentation of Storyblock, which in my opinion does it really, really well. Purely because by looking at this documentation, there's like not an issue or not a problem if you have certain framework, because as you can see, you have instructions for Next.js, Next, React, Vue, Astro, Svelte, Remix, Gatsby, and probably even more community supported frameworks. So basically, with such amount of knowledge, you can start a project with Storyblock, no matter what framework you will use. Then the developer satisfaction score. We can audit the satisfaction of developers who are using our software to see how happy they are with the tool. Maybe they have some feedback, maybe they have some ideas that they would like to see in the application. And the problem is that we, as developers who are developing a solution, we don't know everything. We are not like gods. We have some ideas on implementing some features or a product, but getting this feedback is crucial for making the product even better. This is also why open source is having such a good approach for improving developer experience, because we get this constant feedback from many people around the world who are telling us how we can make it better. And finally, my favorite one, which is time to first hello world. And this is the time needed for the new user to try the product. In the definition here on the left, I also mentioned amount of steps, because during such audit, where you will audit this kind of metric, the time to first hello world, you can check both. So the time and the amount of steps. So how such audit could look like? You can ask a friend or coworker who is not familiar with your product to create a hello world application with it. So how will this person approach is probably they would search the internet, like how I can build a hello world app with XYZ, right? Or we'll go to the documentation of a product and click on the installation or quick start guide. You can record such a meeting or even just observe it and measure the time and the amount of steps, as well as the issues that the user encountered along the way. You can repeat it also with few users to have more meaningful result, because auditing just one person might not be that meaningful. And honestly, I can tell you from experience, because I was doing such experiments or audits, and it took me around an hour. So I audited like few people for 5 to 10 minutes. And it gave us a lot of useful feedback on what we can improve, because we had, for example, inconsistencies in the naming, we had inconsistencies in the dependencies used in the project, and so on, which was causing the frustration, which was causing the users to not know how they can build the simple hello world. So if they have bad experience building hello world, what is the chance that they will like to go with the product for a fully, let's say, enterprise project? I would say pretty small. So in here, I would also like to mention the rule of 80-20, but it works here a bit different. So let me explain. If you deliver 80% of the functionality that the user needs in the first 10 to 15 minutes, they are more likely to spend additional 2 or 3 hours to get the additional 20%. Why? Because they had great experience at the start. They already have 80% of what they needed in the first 15 minutes. This is something what we aim for, right? If we get to this point and we have this like 80% in 10 to 15 minutes, then user will spend this time because they will understand that you cannot get everything in the first 15 minutes, but you already got quite a lot. So they will invest more time into getting this 20% more. So examples of good developer experience. First of all, same result with less steps. Let's take a look at the example of how we can add Tailwind to Vite. Probably some of you already did that, or many of you already did that. So this example is taken directly from the Tailwind website. I know that Tailwind released a new version a few days ago, so maybe there are some subtle differences in my code samples here, but in general, the approach will be quite similar. First of all, we have install required packages. So we install Tailwind, Post CSS, Auto Prefixer. Next, we have to generate the tailwind config.js file with this command. We need to configure this already generated Tailwind config file to add the content about the index.html and the src for our components. Then we add Tailwind directives to index.css, so base, components, and utilities. And we run the project with npm run dev or whatever package manager you are using. Let's now take a look at how we can add Tailwind to Next. First of all, what we need to do is we need to install required packages, and we do it by using Naxi instead. So we go npx Naxi module add Tailwind CSS. So this is the first step. And the second step is to run the project. And that's all. We don't need to add the Tailwind config. We don't need to add the styles to the global CSS file. We don't need to add anything to the content. It just works. And recently, I had a very similar experience when I started a new game. It's not like fully D&D. It's based on D&D. It's like it's the Divinity Original Sin board game. And I was really pleasantly surprised that the creators of this board game, what they did is they provided a specific set of cards and locations and even shorter instructions just for the tutorial phase. And if you wanted to see more, like open the box further and see what else is inside, you got this big card telling you, don't open this until you finish the tutorial. This is great because I'm a person who doesn't like to have too many things. I like to focus on what is needed for me to achieve the goal. And at this stage, for me, to achieve the goal, the point was to go through the tutorial and learn the basics. This is a really great experience. Next, great documentation. And in here, I would also like to shout out to Next for a really great documentation in terms of the core concepts, the additional things we can do with the framework, the examples, API, not only the basic examples, but also advanced usage of certain parts of the framework. Basically, if you are having a problem with Next and you use a search bar at the top and you start typing what is your problem, there is a high chance that you will get an answer. And it's very similar to D&D. You have D&D Beyond, where you can start learning D&D with free rules. You don't have to buy any kind of like scenario first or a set of figurines or something. You just go there. There is a free set of rules that you can start playing as a dungeon master or as a player, and instructions will differ. Extensions to the core. We have the core framework, but it's not enough. We have to get some integrations, modules, and plugins. So in here, Next delivers as well. So we have, I mentioned that I'm part of the ecosystem, Next ecosystem team, which means that I'm maintaining some of the modules. Maybe you use Next Image or Next Security or Next Cloudinary, Algolia. I'm helping the Next core team to maintain those modules. So as I mentioned, you have a core that you are satisfied with, and you're looking for how you can extend it, like add a CMS, add an image optimizer, add a CSS framework, add a UI library, and so on and so on. And it's very similar with the D&D. So you have different systems, like, for example, the Pathfinder or the Dark Eye. You have the Call of Cthulhu, which can be played the same rules, but with the different like items. And recently, also, D&D created the scenario for Lord of the Rings. So if you are not very, very keen on just like a basic D&D, you can have a lot of things to choose from to make your experience of playing better. So I gave you 3 examples of Next, and I think you know where I'm going with it in a talk that is about good developer experience. So developers love good developer experience, right? So in my opinion, we should make it a default, not a nice to have feature. Before I finish my talk, I would like to give you a cool Vue announcement. So in March, during the Vue Amsterdam conference, we will be sharing the State of Vue report for 2025, where maybe some of you contributed to the survey. In this report, we will be sharing challenges Vue developers face nowadays, the statistics about the usage, the use cases and case studies for migrations and for improvements to the Vue applications, and so on and so on. But that is not all. We have also another secret announcement to share that will be also shared in March. And I will just give you a sneak peek that if you missed a Vue newsletter, you will be quite happy then. That will be all from my side. Thank you very much for having me. If you'd like to stay in touch, and I highly recommend to do that, you can find me at Dev2. I have blog at X or Blue Sky or at YouTube at Jacob Andrzejewski. It's my handle, or at GitHub at Barosian. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. And I think we proceed to questions.
Yes, we do. We have a few questions for you. All right. So first one, how do you balance flexibility and simplicity in API design?
Well, it is a tough one. And we had this case in Vue Storefront. So in this approach, what we had was that we wanted to deliver certain functionalities for the e-commerce in a form of composables. But the problem is that we wanted to deliver functionalities to handle things like fetching the product page or product data or categories or user state or checkout and stuff like that. But the problem was that we had to make some things static, let's say. So extending them or customizing them wasn't that great. So, and we were also using we published those composables as a package. So users were basically not able to modify them easily because it was like a code that they were downloading to the app and just using it. So if they change it, like a patch it, it will be probably a breaking change in the next versions. So at a certain point, what we decided to do is we decided to go with the approach where we give the code in a form not as a package, but as already written code, so that the users still get the result, but they can modify them the way they need. This also comes with some issues, like, for example, what if there is a new version, right? How they can migrate. So at this stage, what we needed to do is we needed to also provide a good migration guide for the users, how they can easily migrate the app to the newer version, where we added, for example, some fixes or new features. But it was definitely a better experience than the previous one, where basically users weren't able to change anything.
Awesome. Thank
just
you.
to answer, it is difficult, but you have to find the right balance between. The best is to get the feedback, because we created something that we thought was good, and for us it was solving a problem because we were the guys who were developing it. So we didn't really care that much about the customizability, because as someone who is developing it, you usually focus mainly on the happy paths rather than extending it to any possible scenario. So getting the feedback from the actual users and iterating with your solution based on this feedback, this is something that I would recommend.
Thank you. All right. What strategies do you use for gathering developer feedback?
This is rather a difficult one, because I mentioned a few examples in my presentation, like the time to first hello world, which we did, and it gave us a lot of feedback. We haven't used the service that much. I think this service, they need to be created really, really well specifically for the developers to be interested in contributing to them. Purely because we as developers want to go through forms fast, don't want to spend 20 minutes answering one question. So I think that the time to first hello world, this is something that gave us a lot of useful feedback, and it doesn't take that much time, because as I mentioned, unless building a hello world with your product takes an hour, then it will take time. But if not, if it takes 20 minutes, for example, then you can do few sessions like this, where you observe the users and you make some notes, and based on that you can get some useful feedback, right? Maybe, as I mentioned, you have different naming. In our case, for example, in the documentation we had npm as a package manager, while the project was using yarn. And the problem was that even though you can just say that it's just a different package manager, there might be some subtle differences. And in this particular case, when the user tried to install the dependencies with npm, it was making the project fail. So we weren't aware of that much, because we were building this project, so we had it already prepared, we had all the dependencies installed, and so on and so on. And we knew in our heads that we used yarn, right? But someone in the documentation, when they were writing it, used npm. And for that, if a user wanted to go through the quick start guide, he was failing, or she was failing, purely because there was a difference in the dependencies. Or if your quick start guide is not clear, like it's not clear how you can actually try the product. You can get a lot of information, or is it very complex? It requires you to configure 10 environment variables to make it work. So, and this is something that, for example, can happen to, or already happened to, for example, Next Hub, the project created by Next Labs. When they first announced that they have this free tier where you can build and deploy your app full stack applications to Cloudflare, I tried it out because I was really interested in this idea. But the problem there was that in order to build the app and deploy it, you needed to have the Cloudflare account, which at this stage needed like your card details and so on. Like it was a free trial, it wasn't like fully free. So I messaged Sebastian from Next Labs, and I said to him, maybe it will be possible to make it free, right? Maybe there is a way that you can deploy without actually needing to have this free trial. And Seb told me, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll try it. And the week or 2 weeks after, he said to me, now it's possible to go without this free trial. You can just deploy it freely.
Very cool.
So feedback from the users.
And last question of, don't you have to reference the Tailwind CSS in nux.config.ts modules property?
No longer. No longer, because if you use Nuxi, it will automatically update your modules array. This wasn't done before, and it is also something that we were discussing internally. I think there was a RFC that I also wanted to contribute to, and I gave some ideas on actually including those modules automatically. So the initial idea was that we wouldn't need to register the module in modules at all if the module, for example, doesn't need any configuration from start. But Puya messaged or told me there then that the better option would be to actually push to this array of modules instead, because there will be cases where, for example, certain modules need to be registered there, because, for example, some users don't use like modules Algolia and then the keyword Algolia for configuration. They use the array where the first element is the name of the module and the second is the configuration. So here might be some conflicts. So yeah, in general, if you install it with npm or yarn or pnpm, you would need to add it manually. But if you use npx, it will be automatically added to the modules array.
That's a good reason to use that package installer. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. See you.
All right, y'all. Before we go for a quick break, who's done the giveaway so far? If you haven't done it yet, go spot the secret ducks. We've hidden 3 special guests, yes, ducks, throughout the conference platforms, promotional materials, and booth offers. Can you find them all? Make sure to fill out your discoveries here, and you'll have if you win, you'll have a choice of the Vue.js mid-level certification, mastering Pina, or the Vue School yearly plan. And then, of course, share your dev stack story on X. That is where you choose 3 to 4 items that represent your dev journey, like your first programming book, favorite dev tool, lucky coding mug, which I may not have ducks, but I have llamas. Always good to have your favorite coffee cup and meaningful text stickers. So get creative, put it in a photo, share it on X, tag Vue.js Nation, and use the hashtag Vue.js Nation 25, and you'll get a choice of the same certificates and school plan. So make sure to do that. And up next, we have break. So see you back shortly.